All right, so my name is Jeremy Elder. I'm a staff product designer on the Foundations team. And there is a recording on this. It's 22 minutes. Hopefully I can maybe shave off some time and spare you having to watch me in that one. For the UX Showcase, I'm talking about Pajamas, scaffolding, structure, and ops. And what this is let me just go over to the epic here. I won't read all through this, but it's about two parts here. One is creating and filling some gaps in Pajamas to help, that's the scaffolding part and the structure part, to help us get more efficient and more consistent with just design and visual design, UX, etc. And the other piece is definitions. So when we say pattern or organism or region, doesn't that mean everything or mean the same thing to everybody? Likely not. And so working on really firming up some of our definitions of these different concepts in Pajamas. And so there's three phases that initially working through. One is the scaffolding. So working on definitions, working on how that's reflected in the website with the information architecture, content mapping. And then the third piece of that is a gap analysis. So that would be determining two parts. One, what are just gaps that exist in Pajamas itself? Where is it? Where is there no opinion or statement about how to do something? And the other would be, where are gaps between Pajamas and the product? So are there things that we're doing in Pajamas that the product isn't adopting, or there's really strong patterns in the product, but we don't really have Pajamas documentation to point back to? So identifying those gaps. The second phase is Pajamas structure. So just taking some of those IA changes, those learnings, what we decide on, and just implementing it into the website itself, which is where all of that kind of information is expressed. And then this is just a question I have. What would it take to make Pajamas a single source of truth? And what I mean by that is that we have the SVGs project, we have GitLab UI, we have Pajamas, we have maybe our utility classes that you can find the repo on. There's different places to find Pajamas information, and what would it take to make Pajamas site the actual go-to, the jumping off point for all of that, to make it more of a single source of truth so that we can address all audiences? That's kind of a peripheral question I'm asking, but something that's in the back of my mind. And then the last phase is what I call Pajamas ops. So you've probably heard of design ops and obviously DevOps, but Pajamas ops, things specific to Pajamas operations. So how can we maybe with Storybook create a playground with features and accessibility testing and the ability to put together layouts and utility classes so that you know what's possible with Pajamas, and that would be kind of a crossover between design and engineering. Or how about Figma? How can we do internal plugins that will make the team more efficient? So embedding content from the SVGs project, or like a third-party logo, or better linking of a Figma file with an issuable in GitLab. So things along those lines. Also triage, contributions, some of that workflow related stuff. So lots of different things here. I'll highlight a few outcomes, and then I'll jump into kind of where I've been at in the process today. So the outcomes I'm hoping for would be to be more consistent in design execution and user experience. Have a shared design language. Right now, I feel like, just to be candid, Pajamas is more of a design system, to be fair, which has its own components and attributes and concepts, but it's not quite a design language where we've got the parts of the language and speech, but we're not always using them to articulate a complete thought. And I want Pajamas to be able to be more of a design language where you can see these parts of the language essentially and put them together and consistently articulate a message for our users and an experience. Another outcome would be to have more informed design decisions and contribution. So if we have clear paths on our opinion on what design should be, or how we're expressing different flows, having that documented so that we have a better place to point to. And then lastly, just Pajamas and product planning and prioritization. How do those tie together so that we can be the best at making decisions in Pajamas that will help support the work and the planning that's happening in the product? So I'll jump in here with what I've done today. And I'll keep this fairly abbreviated, but really wanted to document current state. So that's where I started, working on definitions. These definitions come from the Pajamas site today. If you go under Get Started, Structure, you'll see these different categories of what we consider the structure of Pajamas. I focused on the main ones that deal with the UI itself at first. So foundations, components, regions, objects. Won't go into what those are. You can find them over in Pajamas. And I just took a look at the current IA for the site itself. So I have a legend. We have our different sections. You can see that the product section is the deepest, and that's to be expected. And then started thinking about what can be done to actually change this up. How can we move this forward? Little side note, if you're familiar with atomic design, you've probably heard me say that I feel like Pajamas is missing some of those internal layers that would help us assemble our parts to have kind of a complete design. And we've had conversations about why not adopt atomic design? And the reason for that is because atomic design is very much structured on how you would build something. It's kind of your workshop. How am I going to assemble these different parts? But when it comes to consumption and use, you need more of a storefront. And Brad Frost articulates this really well. And you need a more of a storefront where somebody's going to come in and they don't necessarily care how the bread was made or what all the ingredients are, but they just want bread. And so Pajamas is that storefront of somebody coming in and saying, how can I take this off the shelf and use it and apply it to what I need? So that's why atomic design and that thinking is there. But I think our expression of how we assemble the parts needs to be a little more on the consumer of the Pajamas product. So not to get too deep in that, we can carry that conversation on later. But what I've done in this exercise, this is where I'm at today. In 15.2 worked on updating some definitions. And you can see I've got a lot of little speech bubbles here. These are all prompts. So afterwards, well, in fact, I think I did link up in the document this Figma file here. So feel free to jump in. Every time you see my little face in one of these bubbles, that's just a prompt that I've asked a question or expressed a thought about where I'm headed with some thoughts. So please leverage that to jump in and add to the conversation. I'll turn those off for a second. And so with Pajamas, working on definitions is one of the ways that I've started. So how can we build out these concepts and really clarify some things? And I won't read through all of these or any of them really, but these are the main categories. So foundations, components, patterns, templates, objects, and flows. So it's taking something from a very opinionated design attribute, which will help express GitLab personality, and then carrying it all the way through into flows. So how is the user experiencing the product? And if we can document these things end to end and provide meaningful examples and working concepts, then it'll better enable us to have a more opinionated GitLab design carry all the way through, so that when we're doing efforts like unboxing or beautification, we have something to stand on and to say, well, is this the GitLab design language? Is it speaking that? Does this feel like GitLab? Does it look like GitLab? Is it consistent with other experiences in the product? So lots to dive in on here. I have gone through some just visual exploration. I like to kind of capture a thought visually. And so maybe expressing that in iconography or some graphics that we could start to maybe infuse into Pajamas to help kind of cauterize where you might be in Pajamas or some of those concepts. So here's the stack, right? Like foundations, components, patterns, templates, objects, flows, showing how it builds together. And like I said, there's more to be learned if you go and read these definitions and follow up on some of the conversation happening there. As far as the information architecture, went through an exercise to rework that a little bit. And anything that is green is a new page or a link. Anything that's got the purple, it's moved, it's renamed. There's other concepts in there in the legend that you can take a look at. But the main goal is to really organize this content in more meaningful and concise ways, and hopefully provide easier experience as we contribute to Pajamas in the future. So knowing where things go, where they really fit. Today it's a bit fuzzy with regions and objects. And so how can we make that through decision trees or other methods and organization, make that more structured and easier to work with. So I encourage you to take a look through these and see some of the changes and see what sits well with you or maybe what doesn't. There's some section mapping. So taking a look at what our current sections are in Pajamas and is the concept, how do those things either get renamed or reworked or what's new, what's reorganized. So some thoughts there. And also I wanted to express this visually with just a nav concept to really see, would this IA carry through into like usability? Does it make sense kind of at first blush? And so this is just a quick concept of Pajamas navigation, where if I took all these concepts, how would I flesh it out in a site? And does it make sense structurally as I read through this? Does it look clean? And I think to me, at least, the answer is yes. Like this seems like a cleaner presentation and more concise. And that's really what I'm trying to do with the approach. One thing I do want to call out is that today when you go to the Pajamas site, you'll see GitLab design system with the Tanuki. There's no real Pajamas branding, if you will, on the homepage. And as part of this exploration, being able to add that flavor and have it be leading with Pajamas and then state as a descriptor, it's the GitLab design system. So this is just a rework. Again, feel free to jump in. You can see with all the chat going on that there's plenty of conversations to be had. So I would encourage you to do that, as well as take a look at the epic itself, the issues under it. And by all means, please, I would love to hear your thoughts. Jump in on the conversation, and the outcome will hopefully to be a Pajamas design system and design language that helps us to better express kind of a GitLab method of doing things to make design decisions easier and more consistent, but also make contributing more consistent, and then user experience. When we talk about flows, I know Mike Nichols, you have some great thoughts on flows that have greatly contributed to this effort. And so that's kind of the UX piece of that as well. So I will stop sharing. Let me peek over at the document to see if there are any questions. Not seeing anything, so
anybody? Any comments? I like the idea of giving Pajamas its own logo. That's cool.
Can I ask an impromptu question that I have yet to type down? And it's related, but it's not Thomas design related. And maybe this is a dumb question that everyone already knows the answer. What's the story behind the name Pajamas? I got asked this in an interview yesterday. Where does that come from?
So what I've been told is that early on with async work and everybody working from home, it's just related to, hey, you can work in your pajamas. And that was kind of the very simple version of that. I think Tori could probably provide some more color into that, but that's what I'm aware of.
Yeah, we had an issue a while back on naming, and I think Pedro's the person who came up with Pajamas. And yeah, it was a nod to our remote culture before the whole world was remote. So
How
we'll probably dig up that issue.
I was gonna ask, sorry, like what year is that issue? When did you all?
Man.
Yeah.
Either 2017 or 2018. I don't know. I can't remember. Sometime around then, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Probably 2018 is more accurate.
So that would mean Pajamas is almost 5.
Yeah, four or five, something.
5 next
don't know.
year. We could have a party.
Time is a huge blur. I can't remember. Something like that.
We can have a pajama party to celebrate birthday pajama. Anything else?
I think I might have missed it, Jeremy, but did socks make it into the new information architecture?
It's still there. That's one that that's a battle I didn't want to go. Like I'm like socks and pajamas, like it's to me that's a different time of day. And so I'm not gonna go there. I'll let others, maybe in the winter in a colder climate, or if I'm camping, but I decided not to go there. But when you so side note, since you bring up socks, if you didn't know, there's another design system for GitLab called Slippers, and this is for the marketing side of things. And I should note that if you get a chance to learn more about that, please do. But that is out of scope for this effort as well. But just another clothing item, and at some point maybe we'll work in some other Easter eggs with the pajamas theme, but that's TBD.
I'll give it just a few more seconds.